Now, futures were up overnight. We got the jobs report here before the stock market opened up, and we got the private payrolls. They came in negative 33,000, expected to come in 100,000, and previous number last month was 29,000. So the market sold off on that, but they don't have the votes, at least not right now in the House, to pass it. So there's a delay. They're going to end up getting the votes. This thing's going to end up going through. Very well could mark a top in the stock market for the short term. It could be a buy the rumor, sell the news event. Got the negative private payrolls number. Don't have the votes to pass it at this moment. They will eventually get it. That version of the bill has got passed. It got sent over to the House, and so they got to re-vote on all of this one more time. So they got to be able to get the votes. Trump wants to sign it by Friday on Independence Day, July 4th. If they can get it through, again, it's likely going to be a buy the rumor, sell the news event. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. But those are the things. And then the session, Trump announced that the U.S. has struck a trade deal with Vietnam. I told you some of these trade deals are going to be announced as we go forward over the summer. Notice, tariffs are staying on. They're at reduced levels. Same thing happened with China. They did hammer out a trade deal and the market like that. But again, if they could get this deal done, this bill passed through the House, Senate version of it, to be on Trump's desk by Independence Day, the market is already closed for the week, and it'll be interesting to see what happens next week because, again, I'm getting some warning signs that this very well could be a sell the news event. That jobs report tomorrow. Now, we had a negative number for the private payrolls. The unemployment rate is expected to tick back up, 4.3 currently at 4.2%. The jobs number is expected to be positive, 110,000 jobs created. Last month, 139,000. So we'll be watching that. But again, we're going to have an abbreviated session. If they can get the deal done, with the big, beautiful bill, it will likely initially rally with it tomorrow. They can get it done before next week. And if they do get it done either at some point tomorrow or this evening, afternoon or evening, we could see a rally on that with the final trading day of the week. It's looking like it's going to be a sell the news. If they get this big, beautiful bill, that's the actual name of it. That's what Trump's been calling it, so they named it that. Kind of funny. Get it passed. I think it's going to be a buy the rumor, sell the news event. Again, I'm looking for this final thrust higher. We're getting it right now this week. I told you I thought there's a very good chance of a top this week. Maybe I'm wrong, and it's wait next week again, but I told you I thought we could see this happen this week, push up into the resistance levels I've been talking about and complete this divergence. I'm looking to sell into this rally, into this resistance, and flip the trade and go short. I think we get an ABC pullback, and I think maybe a right shoulder for inverse head and shoulders pattern. But again, this looks like it is developing. My guess is it's probably not done. I think it could finish tomorrow or Monday. I think we're going to end up selling off with this divergence once it completes. And I talked about these other divergences giving us pullbacks right here, pullback and sideways move, pullback here, pullback over here. We've had these pullbacks. I don't think this divergence is going to be a pullback. I think this is going to be a reversal, much like what we had back over here at the February peak. You got this divergence, and we ended up dropping below the 50, then below the 200. The 50 is a green line, the 200 is a black line, and you ended up getting a death cross, and you ended up getting a sell-off. I think you're going to see something similar to that here, where we get this larger correction. I think you're going to go a little higher there. I think your MACD here is going to turn up here, and I think you're going to complete this divergence. And in this video, I'm showing you the awesome oscillator. I think it's doing the same thing, and I think that could complete and finish the divergences here on these 60-minute charts. In addition to this divergence that's developing on the MACD, on the RSI here, and on the awesome oscillator, we have the divergences in the daily time frame on the RSI, the triple divergences that are developing on the MACD and the awesome oscillator. They're in the daily time frame that I've been talking about, and I think these things are all going to begin to play out. As we push up here and complete this divergence, I think you're going to slam up into this trend line right here, and Video here, I'm showing you the awesome oscillator, but here's the MACD right here. We had this divergence. It gave us a pullback to the 20. We gapped above the trend line there from this peak to this peak. And again, if we did that, we can make it up towards this trend line, at least to a new high, which we did do right here. And the bottom and predicted the rally. I told you we would blow past the 200. We'll make a new high and likely slam into this trend line right here. It looks like that's going to happen, and it very well could happen tomorrow. Maybe Monday. Again, we have an abbreviated session tomorrow, but I think it's very possible. We might even overthrow this level. We're seeing the RSI move to a new high, forming a little tiny divergence here in the more recent price action. That's interesting, but it's above these levels right here. Very similar to down over here. The low was at a new extreme. The high right here is at a new extreme. I told you we could have a divergence here like we have with the MACD and the awesome oscillator, but you don't have to. And sometimes you just reach new extremes on the RSI. We've seen a rally of about 29%. I have it marked here at 28.5%, but I didn't change it. We went a little bit higher today, right at that 29% area or so. I called the bottom back over here at key support. Everybody was telling us we were going to crash. And the herd and the bears and the herd was saying, yeah, that's got to be right. We were bottoming and we're going to have a massive rally back up. I was correct. I think we're going to top and get a pullback. But I've been talking about this trend line. If you've been following along, you know my signals continue to be bullish. We had momentum turn right here, but my trend signals continue to be bullish. We bounced off the 20. We bounced off of the cloud there. So if momentum could turn back to bullish, we're headed up here to a new high and again, likely towards the trend line. So could we see the big, beautiful bill end up giving us a big, beautiful sell-off with the stock market by completing these diversions? Could that be the catalyst if we see the 10-year Treasury yield begin to spike and fall and yields rise? Concerns about government debt levels. I think that is very likely. And your yield up 1% after dropping below the 200 period moving average here, you're forming a bullish falling wedge right here. And you've got price dropping just below the 200, the 50 still above it. I think you could see it turn back up. We've already seen a rise on concerns about government debt. So this is not going to be anything new. And that's why I think it is possibly the catalyst in that we see that. We've had this divergence give us the bottom back over here. We rallied up over 19%. We've pulled back. You now have a bullish falling wedge, and you can get back above the 200. You could get back above the 50. You could see a breakout of this thing tomorrow here before the weekends. The bond market is still open Thursday, but again, you could see it happen next week, and I think we could see begin to spike back up, and I think that could be the catalyst that rattles the market, and I think that yields rise back up. Right now, a negative correlation with the market. The market's been rising. The yields have been pulling back. Yields start popping higher, break out of this pattern, and we start seeing the market pull back. Times they have a negative correlation. We have a negative correlation to the S&P has been rising up. That's when we got above that 200 period moving average as yields have been falling. Again, this could be the catalyst, or maybe one of the catalysts. The big, beautiful bill could give us a big, beautiful sell-off as the bond market shows concerns about very high government debt levels. I think this is likely. I posted this yesterday late in the evening. As you know, I've been traveling for the Independence Day holiday, visiting relatives. Posted some thoughts that, again, I just want to repeat quickly. We've seen the market shrug off catalyst after catalyst for a sell-off. We've Moody's downgrade, the market shrugged it off. We saw the negative GDP, the market shrugged it off. We had trade tensions with China and the EU and Canada, and the market shrugged all this stuff off. Had tensions in the Middle East, war, and the United States involved, and the market shrugged it off. Watching what could possibly be the catalyst. And it might be a combination of things, but could it be Trump's big, beautiful bill? Could that trigger, and I marked this, could that trigger one big, beautiful stock market sell-off? I think that's possibly the catalyst. I get some kind of pullback. Something is going to get the credit for it. Be this. Again, it's looking like it. My negative divergences are setting up, getting sequence count sell signals as this is setting up now, weekly and the daily time frame. But I think I just bumped my mic. Hope I didn't bust any eardrums out there. But on here, Trump's big, beautiful bill could be a buy the rumor, sell the news event. See profit taking, we could see short sellers ganging up here at resistance, rally up into resistance. As the House passes the bill, and again, maybe it goes on into next week, and so this may not play out. Get it done over the weekend, and Trump signs it next week. But if they pass it, that'd be the catalyst that slams the S&P up into resistance, and then we sell off after Trump signs it on July 4th. The big, beautiful bill be the catalyst for the sell-off, maybe. But why? Due to concerns about growing government debt levels. I think you'll see yields spike back up. We still have out of control, crazy government spending. If we get this bill passed, the middle class tax cuts and all the tax cuts in it, he hopes that works its way into the market. People saying, "Oh, no, this is gonna, today." Some guy saying this is going to ensure that we have no recession, and that is just simply not true. I remember the George W. Bush tax cuts. He ran on that in 2000, and when they went to get it passed in 2001, it was a buy the rumor, sell the news event. Now, I still think we're going to end up going higher. This be a short-term sell the news event gives us a pullback possible. Please support the channel with the link directly below. That allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the charts, you like the indicators, please let me know that by supporting the channel today. If you could take a moment to do that, I would really appreciate it. I just put it all out there and ask that you do what you can to help out because I don't want to sell you anything. I need to hear from you in order to make that work. If you find this information useful, please let me know that. It takes a lot of time to do this. Showing you stuff I look at every day. What I use to make my decisions about the stock market. When I called the April bottom, it was because we were at these key support levels on the NASDAQ here and on the S&P 500. Support the channel. Follow the link below to take you to a secured site. And you can donate any amount you want or make it a recurring donation. If you do that, I thank you. And I think you're going to get these candles of indecision in the weekly time frame. The S&P's got a narrow range body. We've got a doji right here on the NASDAQ right now at this trend line of resistance. Notice the blue trend line. I think you're going to end up turning back and going back towards the 50 period or maybe beyond it. We've risen up 38% on the NASDAQ. The S&P's up 29%. I think you're going to get a pullback. Eventually, I think you'll get above the blue line and go higher. Complete a 5-leg push higher on the NASDAQ. Markets become very overbought. The levels I told you to be watching for a top. We could see that this week. We could see it next week. Any day now, we could see it. You still might reach this trend line that I've been talking about. Again, NVIDIA's up 84.33%. Might form a brand new divergence right here. And that might buy us a few more days. Certainly possible. Got these divergences. You could see one right here on the MACD forming here in the daily time frame on NVIDIA. NASDAQ has a divergence as well. Time is likely short. We could see a top any day. Maybe this week, maybe next week. Remember, my signals remain bullish. The divergences play out on those 60-minute charts that will have to get validated. Like the S&P 500 on the hourly chart, looking for this divergence to complete. My guess is it's not done yet. I think that we're about to get this one final thrust higher, and then I think we're going to turn down. I think we're completing a 5-leg push higher. I think it's nearly done to complete wave 1, and then I think we'll pull back for wave 2. I think the MACD is going to try to firm up here at the center line. The RSI probably is not done yet. I think you can get a divergence to complete a peak, much like what we saw back over here at the February high. Other divergences have given us pullbacks. This one very well could give us a reversal. The thing I've been talking about on the S&P. NASDAQ 100 was up 163 points today, up 0.73%. And again, we've overthrown the trend line. As I talked about, we very well could as the S&P plays catch up. But again, I think you're going to end up, we already had the Bullish Golden Cross as well with the 50, the green line above the black line, the 200. Again, I think you're going to end up completing a rising wedge looking pattern here. likely complete a little divergence there on the RSI, probably pull back and drop below the 200 period moving average and get higher lows into the cloud here somewhere to get a right shoulder for these inverse head and shoulder patterns. Multiple point divergence on these MACDs. Stochastic, again, it's rolled over, but again, it's probably going to get one right here in the more recent price action. But again, see a peak this week, next week. Remember, my signals are still bullish. It's very possible we get a peak this week or shortly thereafter. Please listen to me carefully. My signals are still bullish. There's risk that we continue higher. I'm telling you, those divergences on the 60-minute charts could possibly, did you hear the word could possibly be a peak that will reverse my signals. That's likely. That's what I'm watching. Now, we got the bullish golden cross. Again, I wasn't able to make the video traveling for the Independence Day holidays, visiting relatives. And I'm making a video today. I'll be making a video tomorrow. I apologize for the inconvenience, but we did get that bullish golden cross yesterday, Tuesday, and I told you to be watching for that. Could be associated with the peak. When Bitcoin peaked on May 22nd, it peaked the day we got the golden cross. Got the bearish cross over here with the 50 crossing below the 200 right there. That was associated with the bottom. We had already bottomed, and we got that hollow red candlestick at key horizontal support and rising support of the 2020 trend line. I talked about this at great length and detail. I was telling you that we're getting a bottom. Market breadth indicators at single digits. We had greed index at readings of 3, 4, and 5. Getting bottoming signals there. And again, I told you the day before that we were likely going to bottom. That was on Friday that we were going to bottom. That was the day Kramer told us we were going to crash, get a Black Monday crash. And I told you we were likely going to bottom surrounding the tariffs that week. And we bottomed very Monday, and I called a bottom at that time. But he says there's going to be a Black Monday crash. The opposite's going to happen. People that were telling us it was never going to happen, never going to sell off. And again, now we're seeing get very, very bullish at tops, they get very bearish at bottoms. No hope. It's over. Here at the bottom, here, nothing's taking the market down. Same thing up here. Oh, we've had a breakout. And we're likely going to pull back into the cloud here somewhere, likely dropping below the 50 and the 200 as they get the golden cross. Remember, I talked about that. You're likely going to pull back to them as we get that golden cross, or just before we get the golden cross. We just had it. About both of those possibilities, we just had it. We push below the upper band here. We're now back above it today. Again, I think you're going to turn off of this upper band, upper Bollinger Band there in blue. You're going to peak out here, and we could see the peak tomorrow, maybe if I'm right about this week, or beyond into next week. Can get the bill done and passed, and again, can the market rally on it? Maybe by the time I'm done with this video, they got it passed and it goes to Trump or maybe at some point on Thursday during the session. We'll see. Or there's just hopes of it passing, and they don't get it passed till at some point over the weekend. But again, they all want to leave for their holidays, as politicians do. I imagine likely end up getting it passed, ready to be signed. But it could be a sell the news event. Talked about that at great length and detail on X, formerly known as Twitter. Those are the concerns about rising government debt levels. A couple things I want to mention quickly. This is the Dow. We're getting a 9 count here today with today's close. We don't have the bullish golden cross yet. Other counts have given us pullbacks surrounding our 200 period moving average. We're above it right now, but we're not moving to a new high yet. Getting a 9 count. Now the Russell today got a 9 count with Wednesday's close, surrounding our 200 period moving average. Again, we had a 13. It gave us a pullback, very similar to what we had with the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. 13 over here associated with a top that eventually occurred. The 13 over here marked the bottom with the Russell. I personally believe we have a 5-leg push higher, and that we have an A, we're going to get a B, and then we're going to get a C. Sorry, cut that off a little bit, but an A, B, C back up, it's going to be lower than this high right here for the Russell. I think the Russell is in a ABC corrective move. No, we're getting price exhaustion. So it's saying, hey, you could get another pullback, but I think it's going to be a bigger pullback, likely a short-term reversal for the market. We could still go higher with these 9 counts. Like the S&P is going to go a little bit higher, but then quickly turn. Getting a 9 count on the Russell here and the Dow. Just be aware of that. The NASDAQ 100, and those were the daily charts. Here's the daily for the NASDAQ, represented here by the NASDAQ 100, represented by QQQ, the QQQ ETF, and I marked that daily. And you can back over. We have a 7 of a 9 count. If the rally can continue just a little bit higher, tomorrow you get bar 8. Monday you'll get bar 9. You continue to have bars above the bars from 4 bars ago. Could complete another 9 count. Again, these other counts, they gave us pullbacks, but remember we talked about in the weekly time frame, those weekly charts could override this. End up getting the 9 count on the S&P weekly chart, which we have now seen happen. Be aware of tomorrow we can get a bar 8 if we're above the bar from 4 bars ago on the NASDAQ. If not, the count gets canceled out. Have a short trading session tomorrow. Get the bar 8 on Thursday, then on Monday, get bar 9. Bar 9 does not have to be the high of the count. It just has to be above the bar from 4 bars ago. So keep that in mind. Now tomorrow we could possibly get a 13 count, another 13 count on the S&P 500. Show you this up close in a moment, but 9 count on the Dow. We're getting the 9 count on the Russell. NASDAQ may get another 9 count. Already had one now in the weekly time frame. S&P got one previously last week, a 9 count, and now we're getting another 13. Now this 13.9 right here, very similar to over here. This actually gave us a sell-off that gave us the topping process. Again, this could be a pullback or it could be a reversal. It'd just be a pullback if we ended up getting that 9 count in the weekly time frame completing. We ended up seeing that happen. Count got canceled out like the Dow and the Russell did, then this count would have given us a pullback with a lower high, the bigger pullback. Those were up nearly 29% from when I called the bottom, predicted this rally. Again, I told you in this area is where I thought the top would be. Still think that. Two things to be aware of on the S&P 500, that tomorrow, if we're above the bar from 2 bars ago, you're going to get a 13 countdown sell signal, another 13 countdown. Could produce a reversal. This one only produced a pullback because we were still completing that 9 count in the weekly time frame. That count is now done. We could go a little bit higher, reach this trend line, get a doji or a spinning top or a narrow range body or something like that in the weekly time frame this week, and then begin to sell off. Evening star reversal on the weekly chart. I'll show you that chart in just a moment. The weekly chart to bar 12 today. Seeing these counts because price is getting tired. Was tired here, but it only gave us a pullback. Price was tired over here, but it gave us a pullback to build momentum to get above the 200. This one is probably going to produce a reversal, a short-term reversal, to give us a bigger pullback that will drop under the 50 and the 200 as we get a golden cross. Again, cross very well could be associated with a topping process as the cross was associated with the bottom. Often that is the case. Corrections that we've had were associated with the death cross marking a bottom for the S&P 500. At bar 12, tomorrow we could get bar 13 on our abbreviated session. You could have a bar 9. It'll be tomorrow bar 8, 9 count. If you're above the bar from 4 bars ago on Monday, you can get the 9 count. You could have a 13.9, much like what we had over here, much like what we saw previously at the December peak there. It could be associated with the reversal because we've had that 9 count in the weekly time frame. 9 count that we'll get on Monday, if it does play out, it doesn't have to be the high of the count. It just have to be above the bar from 4 bars ago. May not complete. Sometimes they don't complete, but you could get the 13 count and cancel out the 9 count. You'll still have a 13 count. So just be aware of this count to the resistance levels I've been talking about, this trend line, and maybe we overthrow it. We tag it and turn. Do we get a topping tail? Do we get a doji? What do we get? Again, we've got lighter trading volume this week. You got a good shot that we may put in a peak this week. If we don't, you could get it next week. Again, looking for Nostradamus to tell you, I'm a trader. I look at support and resistance. A lot of people that have unrealistic expectations. I'm telling you, I'm looking for selling to happen in this area. I don't know the exact date. I don't know the exact hour it's going to happen, but I think it's going to happen. I could show you why. I deal in probability. I don't deal in fake fortune telling. There was a bottom in April because we had key support levels, many signals suggesting a bottom. Here we're seeing negative divergences and we're seeing these counts showing prices getting tired. Some people just have such unrealistic, well, it didn't play out over here. Yes, it did. We got a correction. I told you if that doesn't lead to a top, the 9 count in the weekly time frame will override this and it will just be a correction. We talked about that at great length of detail. So you're going to get this 13 or maybe a 13.9. See it complete by Monday. As that's forming, we just completed the 9 count in the weekly time frame. We did it just before that on the NASDAQ 100. And I told you sometimes you get these 9 counts and you do what? You go a little higher. I told you it's like phone. Sometimes you look at your phone, forgot to charge it, up to try to do something, it dies on you immediately. On these 9 counts, they turn immediately. Other times, a little bit of life left in them, and you go a little bit higher, and that's what this is, where we just overthrow the 9 count a little bit, it's got a couple of weeks overthrowing it. Still likely going to play. Oh, it didn't play out immediately, so it's not going to play out. And again, understand how to read the indicator. Prices are getting tired. It doesn't say, oh, on this day and hour, we're going to get a turn. Although sometimes the 9 counts are associated with tops at right when they happen. Again, I think you're going to get this narrow range body, or maybe we get a doji or a spinning top or something by tomorrow's close for the week. Here, this is the weekly chart, and I got it marked here daily. Uh-oh. Let me switch it back. Sorry about that. Weekly chart, let's get it straight. I think you could get a big red ugly bar next week, and you could see an evening star reversal, a wide range bar followed by a narrow range bar, maybe a doji or spinning top or something, followed by another red bar, and that could give us a sell-off. I think we're eventually coming back to fill this gap right here, and we could easily see an 8 to 10% sell-off very easily. Fibonacci retracement, as I've been talking about. Be aware is that possible 13 count completes tomorrow if we're above the bar from 2 bars ago. Complete a 13 in the daily, and maybe the 9 on the Monday. If you do, you get a double sequence count sell signal, but you will have a 13 if you can complete it tomorrow, and then you have this 9 count that we just completed. Again, this is telling us we're going to see some kind of pullback, corrective move, short term. Now, here is the S&P 500 directly underneath this trend line. We are likely going to tag it, and we're probably going to do it tomorrow. If the House votes on the Senate version of the big, beautiful bill, see the market rally on this. But it's likely going to be buy the rumors, sell the news event, possibly the catalyst for the sell-off once Trump signs the bill into law. And I think you get the pullback. We now have the bullish golden cross from yesterday. Our divergence is setting up here very nicely. This divergence right here gave us this pullback right here. This divergence is likely going to end up giving us a much bigger pullback, leading to a short-term reversal of conditions, a reversal, give us a right shoulder, probably dropping back below the 200, probably coming back and filling some of these gaps, and our recent gap higher. We saw signals flip for just a moment to bearish, right back to bullish. But I think we're going to hit this trend line. I think you're going to do it this week. I think you could start seeing a sell-off. And we're going to have an abbreviated session on Thursday. We're only going to be open for a few hours. The stock market will close a few hours early. We'll be closed on Friday. Trump's wanting to sign this bill on July 4th, Independence Day. It could be that we begin a sell-off when everybody comes back from the Independence Day holiday after short trading week. It very well could happen, or we could see the peak at the beginning of the week and begin to turn down. My signals are still bullish, but you have these divergences that are setting up. Look at the MACD. You've got the same thing going on here as the oscillator. You have that divergence, and now you have another divergence. Stochastic tried to roll over, turning back up. You're probably going to see it turn here, and if the House passes that bill here tonight or tomorrow during the session, we could see a rally up into that level. But again, I think it's going to be a buy the rumor, sell the news event. S&P daily. Just look at the awesome oscillator on the hourly chart of the S&P cash. And again, we've got this divergence going on here, and that kind of took prices sideways, and now we've got this one going on. And again, this is probably going to try to wrap up with the abbreviated session on Thursday. Maybe it goes on into the Monday session. You've got a similar divergence right here on the MACD that's going on. So again, I think you're going to push up towards the trend line in the daily time frame, and then I think you're going to peak. This is the 60-minute chart of the S&P cash. It looks very similar to the 4-hour chart of the futures, which looks like it's going to try to complete a divergence overnight or on into tomorrow at the end of the session. We started to get a green bar here Yesterday evening, went back to red bars. The end of the session, we get a green bar. We tried to flip it back to a red cloud. Do you see the red arrow? Went from red to green, or to blue, I should say, back to red, back to blue now, session, and that ended up flipping this bar at the end of the session back to green. We'll probably see more green bars overnight with futures. This is the E-mini futures of the S&P, but at some point tomorrow in our abbreviated session, you're probably going to finish this divergence, and it's probably going to be surrounding that trend line or just beyond it, just under it. But again, we are within striking distance of it here with futures in the 4-hour time frame, very similar to the 60-minute chart of the S&P cash. I think that, again, you'll complete a divergence. Could see something similar on the NASDAQ 100, or the NASDAQ 100 4-hour chart. Again, at the very end, we got a green bar. You could see during the session tomorrow, or maybe on into Monday's session, but I think tomorrow you're going to see this play out. Probably more green bars as we go overnight. We could see a peak and then start to get a pullback maybe during the session, or close strong and start to do it on Monday. But again, I think you're going to see these divergences complete. 4-hour chart of the NASDAQ 100 futures. NASDAQ hourly chart looks identical to the S&P. Again, you're coming up here. You're getting a lower tower. Again, you're getting the divergences, these multiple point divergences. And now we're getting another one here that are the volatility here, and then over here at the 50-period moving average, again, turning back up. If we can make a new high. Sometimes at tops, S&P and NASDAQ diverge. Get a sell-off with tech. Yesterday, NVIDIA sold off, go higher. Sometimes they do diverge, but again, I'm looking for a top. NASDAQ and S&P, and I think you got a good shot of it this week or early next week. But again, I told you, I think that pretty good odds that we get it this week. NASDAQ overthrew that trend line. Remember, it was closer to it than S&P. I told you it can get an overthrow to it if S&P plays catch up and tries to reach it. But again, I told you, again, watch this for possible inverse head and shoulders. Look what is happening. Again, we're going sideways back over here. I talked about the possibility of divergences setting up. I think you're going to see red bars, but by the time we get the red bars, the top will likely already be in, and you'll have this triple divergence on the Awesome Oscillator and on the MACD in the daily time frame. We can push a little bit higher if this is not finished yet, and our divergences on our intraday charts, the Awesome Oscillator, in that 60-minute time frame, and other indicators on the hourly charts and on the daily charts. Looking for those divergences on the RSIs on those 60-minute charts.